Hello and welcome to Learn TV, the channel dedicated to the learning and development industry. My name is Philip and I will be your host for this broadcast. Our guest for today's show is Gregory Schlegel, an expert trainer in the field of supply chain and founder of Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium. Together, we will discuss supply chain risk management and resilience and how can companies identify, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks. Welcome, Gregory. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
My pleasure. Great to be with you today to talk about our passion.
We would like to start by asking about your definition of supply chain risk management and resilience.
Sure. We like to get folks grounded on risk in supply chain with two basic definitions. First, what is a resilient enterprise? A resilient enterprise has the capacity to overcome disruptions and continually transform itself to meet the changing needs and expectations of its customers, shareholders, and other stakeholders. To be honest with your audience, that's a very tall order. But to us, this is why any company would spend any time developing good supply chain risk management methodologies. The second definition is supply chain risk management. It's the implementation of strategies to manage everyday and exceptional risks throughout your entire supply chain by continuously assessing those risks with the objective of doing what? Reducing your vulnerability and ensuring business continuity. So the way to think about good supply chain risk management is think of it as the intersection of good supply chain management and excellent risk management. So supply chain risk management to us is the what to do and the how to do it. Becoming a resilient enterprise is the why. That's how we like to get folks grounded in supply chain risk management.
How did the L3RN Consortium start and for how long has it been operating?
Great question. The Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium's genesis was born out of a first-of-a-kind supply chain risk management MBA class at Lehigh University here in the States. I've taught supply chain risk management at Lehigh University for 10 years. That original body of knowledge has grown into multiple courses at Lehigh University, over 25 workshops per year around the globe, with over 15 educational partners in 23 countries, driven by a best-selling book and presently 2 online certificate supply chain risk and resiliency courses. How long have we been operating? The Supply Chain Risk Management Consortium has been active since 2012. The consortium consists of 32 companies at the moment, and that's about 1,700 risk professionals around the globe. The consortium has educated over 3,000 operational professionals in the last 7 years through workshops, seminars, classroom courses, and client engagements. The consortium works in 23 countries, as we said, and we lead, guide, direct, and coach organizations, large and small, and go across multiple industry sectors, including government agencies and non-governmental organizations, to educate, build awareness, and identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks. The consortium members bring tools, techniques, methodologies, and cloud-based software solutions to help us identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks.
Which industries do you operate in?
Good question. We work in almost every industry sector. Why? Because to us as a consortium, a risk is a risk, is a risk, no matter what industry sector we're talking about. Yes, certain industries tend to have more inherent risks in their supply chain than others, but our education and coaching approach is, again, to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks across any industry. We built a very deep and essentially wide body of knowledge and extensive consulting exclusively in this space, which we leverage to lead, guide, direct, and coach companies along their supply chain risk and resiliency journey, no matter what industry they operate in.
In a Gartner survey, only 21% of the respondents stated that they had a highly resilient network, but more than half expected to be highly resilient within a few years. That's a positive sign, but what exactly can be done to get ahead of those supply chain risk factors?
It's a very good question. We call it the $64,000 question. I wish I had a silver bullet for your audience, but we don't. But we do have some thoughts, all right? First and foremost, supply chain risk management is all about culture. We've spent countless hours fine-tuning assessments over the years to understand a company's risk appetite, operating propensities, and risk tolerance before we work with a company. So many companies around the globe are very risk averse and procrastinate when it comes to making risk-oriented decisions. Understanding your company's risk appetite and culture is key. We actually have an online tool that does that for a company, and we use it every time we talk to a potential company prospect. Next, we would advocate getting educated. Register for one of the L3RN supply chain risk management 5-day workshops this year. We have a couple on the calendar going forward. The 5-day class is a treasure trove of best practices to identify, assess, mitigate, and manage supply chain risks. And you get an opportunity in the class to assess your own company's supply chain maturity and risk and witness those risks across 13 tenets, and the tool is free. It's part of the L3RN course. It's called the Supply Chain Readiness Assessment Tool, which again is part of the course. And finally, 3 quick answers. We would advocate begin, no matter who you are, how small, how big, begin to identify risks within your supply chain. So that's our 3-pronged answer to that question.
You mentioned you provide certificates and support other organizations with accreditations. Can you elaborate?
Sure. We've been doing that for about 8 years. My mentor at Lehigh University and the director of our supply chain 4-year curriculum, Dr. Trent, and I co-authored a new book, Supply Chain Risk Management, an Emerging Discipline. The consortium, utilizing this body of knowledge from our book, from workshops, and university classrooms, has been supporting certificates in supply chain risk management for APEX, now called ASCM, for the last 5 years, a certification in supply chain resilience called SC-R from the Logistics Institute of Canada for the last 5 years. And now we, the consortium, are offering our own certificate in supply chain risk and resiliency upon completion of 2 new online courses, including a certificate when you take the L3RN SCRM course. So one of our courses is very basic. The second and newest course is geared around supply chain risk management in the public healthcare arena. We also support a company called IRM, the Institute of Risk Management out of the UK. They have a supply chain risk management certificate course, which we have partnered with them over the last couple of years. And they are, if I didn't mention it, they reside in the UK.
How long have you been working with L3RN Institute? Can you tell us a bit more about your experience there?
Sure can. I believe we've been working with L3RN about 8 years, actually since Arbin and I had our initial dinner meeting in Dubai. We've been supporting the 3 L3RN SCRM 5-day sessions per calendar year, along with several client on-site workshops in KSA and Bahrain over the last 8 years. It's been a very long and enjoyable relationship, and hopefully we can do more together in the future.
Do you have any insights going forward in terms of the constant supply chain disruptions around the globe?
It is, again, the $64,000 question. We're all experiencing what we call the bullwhip effect. That is when demand and supply shocks turn efficient supply chains into disrupted supply chains. But we have a few thoughts. We've been in this space for over 10 years. There will always be supply chain disruptions. Because supply chains operate around the globe in every corner of the world, this is what we call the VUCA world that we're living in right now, all of us. VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And this will continue to disrupt supply chains. And the pandemic has exacerbated supply chain disruptions. Why? Because COVID government lockdowns, still occurring today after 2.5 years, have produced demand and supply shocks to the supply chain simultaneously across all industry sectors and around the globe. That is something that supply chain professionals have not witnessed in 40 years. That's what makes the supply chain disruption so compelling and so impactful. With that said, we continue to advise our clients, our workshop attendees, our classroom students, and folks in webinars to do these things. First, ensure the safety of your staff and your partners, and then over-communicate with them. In a crisis, you need to over-communicate with your entire company community. Then maybe create crisis management teams to do what? Prioritize your key materials, your key suppliers, your key logistics companies, and your customers. Improve your supply chain visibility. What do we mean by that? We mean improve the visibility upstream to your suppliers and downstream to your customers. Maybe you want to do something else called mapping your supply chain. Once you map a supply chain, you can identify risks within that supply chain, whether they've occurred already or whether they could occur. And once you identify those risks in your supply chain, we advocate you assess those risks and build out what we call a risk response plan to mitigate those risks. And the last thread we have is get educated. Register in the L3RN supply chain risk management classrooms. We have 2 on calendar in the next couple of months. Get educated. There's a treasure trove of best practices in that 5-day class. So with that, I thank you, and it's been a pleasure.
Gregory, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure indeed.
My pleasure as well. Anytime we get to chat about our passion, folks, it's a good day for us. So thanks again.
A big thanks to our viewers as well for tuning in. If you want to watch this episode again or browse through more topics, you can always visit our YouTube and Vimeo channels for more episodes. Feel free to leave us a message or a comment in our comment section, and we will get back to you with feedback. Until next time, stay tuned.